They called me crazy when I said my white CEO wife was cheating, until hotel security called me at midnight with proof I never wanted to see. What I discovered in that conference room wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated plan to destroy me that had been months in the making. But here's what my wife and her family didn't know. I had been building something they couldn't touch, something that would turn their own cruelty into the foundation of my revenge. By the time I was done, she would be begging for a second chance while watching me drive away in a car worth more than her yearly salary. What happened next changed everything about who I thought I was and who I was meant to become. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story of betrayal, humiliation, and quiet justice will show you that sometimes the best revenge isn't burning bridges, it's building an empire they can never reach. The office clock read 11:40 when my phone rang. I was counting the day's cash, sorting bills by denomination like Mama taught me. 20s with 20s, tens with tens, everything in its place. The garage was quiet except for the hum of the vending machine and the distant sound of late traffic on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Deshaun had left an hour ago, but I stayed to balance the books. Someone had to make sure the numbers were right. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Nadia Brooks from Hotel Security at the Riversend Grand. The voice was professional, calm, too calm for this time of night. My stomach dropped. Avery was at the Riversend for her quarterly conference. She'd been there since Tuesday. Today was Wednesday. Is my wife okay? The words came out before I could stop them. She's fine, sir. But there's been an irregularity involving Ms. Lang, and I need you to come in. Irregularity. The word sat heavy in my chest like a wrench dropped on concrete. What kind of irregularity? I'd prefer to discuss this in person, Mr. Cole. You left your contact information as an emergency contact during her previous stay. That was 6 months ago. Avery had insisted I drive her to the hotel because her car was in the shop. She'd introduced me to the front desk as my husband with that bright smile she used when she wanted to control the narrative. Can you be here within the hour? Nadia asked. I looked around the office, receipts scattered across the desk, half-empty coffee cup growing cold. Tank, my German shepherd, sleeping by the space heater. Everything normal until this moment. I'll be there. Ask for me at the front desk, 17th floor. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then powered it down and slipped it into my pocket. Tank lifted his head when I moved. He always knew when something was wrong. Come on, boy. We're closing up. I locked the cash in the safe, turned off the lights, and set the security system. My hands moved automatically through the routine, but my mind was racing. Irregularity. What did that even mean? Outside, the November air bit through my work jacket. I walked Tank around the building once, letting him do his business while I tried to think straight. The neighborhood was quiet, porch lights glowing in windows, normal people living normal lives. I loaded Tank into my pickup truck and texted Deshaun, "Emergency, hotel." He'd want details, but there weren't any. Not yet. The drive to downtown took 25 minutes. Traffic was light, just a few cars and the occasional delivery truck. Streetlights blurred past as my mind ran through possibilities. Accident, incident with another guest, food poisoning. But deep down, I knew. The way you know when thunder follows lightning. The way you know when someone's lying before they finish their sentence. Avery was cheating. I'd felt it for months without wanting to admit it. The late nights that stretched later, the way she checked her phone during dinner, the new clothes, new perfume, new distance in her eyes when she looked at me. I parked in the hotel's valet circle and grabbed my jacket from the passenger seat. The Riversend Grand rose 30 floors into the sky, all glass and marble and quiet money. The kind of place where people like Avery belonged and people like me were tolerated. The lobby was mostly empty, Just a night clerk and a woman in a business suit typing on her laptop by the fireplace. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light on polished floors that probably cost more than I made in a year. "I'm here to see Nadia Brooks," I told the desk clerk. "Security." He made a quick call, then handed me a key card. "17th floor, Mr. Cole. She's expecting you." The elevator was silent except for the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. I watched the numbers climb and tried to prepare myself for whatever was coming. 17. The doors opened to reveal a carpeted hallway with cream-colored walls and brass fixtures. Everything hushed and expensive. Room 1702 had a small plaque that read, "Security Office." I knocked twice. "Come in." Nadia Brooks was a black woman in her early 30s with kind eyes and graying temples. She wore a navy blazer and had the bearing of someone who'd seen everything but still cared about doing right. "Mr. Cole, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, sit." The office was small but professional. A desk, two chairs, a wall of monitors showing hotel corridors and common areas. She offered me a bottle of water, which I accepted because my mouth was dry as paper. "I need to see some identification first," she said gently. I handed over my driver's license. She checked it against something on her computer screen, then nodded. "What happened?" I asked. Nadia opened a leather portfolio and pulled out a printed log sheet. At approximately 9:47 this evening, cameras recorded Ms. Lang and another conference attendee entering Suite 1728 together. The suite was registered to the other party. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. Who was the other person? "Tyler Brandt. He's listed as a junior VP in Ms. Lang's company." Tyler. I'd met him twice at company functions. Tall, white, perfectly styled hair, and a smile that said he'd never worked with his hands a day in his life. He always stood a little too close to Avery during conversations. How long were they in there? Mr. Brandt left alone at 11:23 p.m. Ms. Lang remained in the suite. 36 minutes. I did the math automatically, the way I calculated repair estimates or measured gaps between engine parts. 36 minutes was more than enough time for my marriage to die. Is there footage of what happened inside? No, sir. We don't monitor the interior of guest rooms or suites, but we do track keycard access and have corridor cameras for security purposes. I nodded, trying to process the information like it was a diagnosis on a broken transmission. Facts, details, things I could understand and fix. Except, this couldn't be fixed. "Why did you call me?" I asked. "Instead of handling it through the hotel?" Nadia hesitated. "There's something else you should know." She pulled out another sheet of paper. This one had Avery's signature at the bottom. Ms. Lang provided emergency contacts when she checked in. She listed you, but she also included a note. Nadia's voice was careful, professional. She requested that in case of any domestic matters, security should contact her directly rather than reaching out to you. She indicated you might be prone to jealousy. The words hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. Avery had planned for this. She'd set up a narrative where I was the problem before anything even happened. But, Nadia continued, this wasn't classified as a domestic matter. Mr. Brandt used a conference suite for personal purposes after official events had ended. That's a hotel policy issue, not a marriage issue. So, I followed standard protocol and contacted the emergency contact. I sat back in the chair, absorbing the implications. Avery had tried to protect herself and it backfired because she didn't understand hotel policy any better than she understood me. "Can I get a copy of that log?" I asked. "I can't provide physical copies, but I can read you the official summary for your records. Would you like me to do that?" "Yes." She read through the timeline again, slowly and clearly. I recorded it on my phone with her permission. Times, names, room numbers, everything documented in the calm, precise language of an incident report. When she finished, I turned off the recording and slipped the phone back into my pocket. "Thank you," I said, "for calling me, for treating me with respect." "Of course." She stood when I did. "Mr. Cole, for what it's worth, you're handling this with a lot of grace." I shook her hand and walked out into the hallway. The elevator seemed to take forever to arrive, and when it did, I pressed the button for the main floor without thinking. But then I changed my mind. 17th floor, Suite 1728. I walked down the quiet corridor until I found it, a brass placard by the door, just like all the others. I stood there for a moment, listening. No sounds from inside, no lights under the door. I could knock. I could demand answers. I could make a scene and prove Avery right about the jealous husband story. Instead, I turned and walked back to the elevator. Outside the hotel, the night air felt different, sharper, like breathing in winter for the first time and realizing summer was really over. I drove home in silence, Tank watching me from the passenger seat like he knew something was wrong. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. It looked smaller than usual, sitting quiet under the streetlight I'd installed myself last spring. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it that morning. Coffee cup in the sink, newspaper folded on the counter, the framed photo of our wedding day smiling from the kitchen table. In the picture, Avery's white dress seemed to glow against my black tuxedo. We looked happy, young, like people who believed love was enough to bridge any gap. I picked up the frame and studied it for a moment, then set it face down. My wedding ring felt heavy on my finger. I worked it off slowly and placed it on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker. The tan line underneath was pale as old bone. I thought about calling Deshawn back, but what would I say? That my wife was cheating with her junior VP while I was home counting receipts and walking the dog? Instead, I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator and sat on the couch, Tank curled up on his bed by the fireplace. The house felt too quiet, so I turned on the television and flipped through channels without watching anything. The late news was starting, traffic reports and weather forecasts for people who had normal problems. I turned it off and sat in the dark, thinking about 36 minutes and the sound of Nadia Brooks' voice saying irregularity like it was just another word. My phone buzzed with a text message. I almost ignored it, but the screen lit up with Avery's name. Breakfast, presentation day. Wish me luck. A red heart emoji, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just destroyed everything we'd built together in less than an hour. I didn't reply. I set my alarm for 6 in the morning and tried to sleep on the couch. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that log sheet with times and room numbers written in neat, professional handwriting. Evidence of betrayal documented in triplicate. At 6:10 a.m., my phone buzzed again. I already knew it would be Avery. I showered and dressed in clean work clothes. Thursday morning routine, same as always. Feed Tank, make coffee, check the weather. Except nothing was the same. At 7:05, I heard Avery's car in the driveway. Her white BMW sedan, polished and perfect like everything else in her life. She came through the front door with a coffee cup in one hand and her phone in the other, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. "Morning, baby," she said, leaning in for a kiss. I stepped back. "How was your evening?" I asked. She paused for half a second, then smiled. "Long, boring presentations and networking dinners. You know how it is." "Do I?" Her smile flickered. "What do you mean?" "How's Suite 1728?" The color drained from her face. The coffee cup trembled in her hand. "I don't know what you're talking about." Hotel security called me at 11:47 last night. Nadia Brooks. She had an incident report about you and Tyler Brandt. Avery's face went through several expressions in quick succession. Shock, fear, then something harder. "You don't understand how these things work," she said, setting down her coffee cup with deliberate care. Conference politics are complicated. Tyler needed to discuss the merger proposal, and the business center was closed. We used his suite for a private meeting. For 36 minutes? I don't like your tone. I don't like your lies. She straightened her shoulders and looked at me with the expression I'd seen her use on employees who disappointed her. Cold, distant, superior. This is exactly why I told them you might overreact, she said. You don't understand the world I work in. These are high stakes business relationships. Sometimes they require discretion and flexibility that people in other circles might not comprehend. Other circles, like being a black man who worked with his hands, made me too stupid to understand adultery. Right, I said. I'm just a simple mechanic. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. I walked to the key hook by the door and grabbed my truck keys. Tank was already at my side, sensing the tension in the room. Where are you going? Avery asked. I'll be staying at Deshawn's for a bit. Marcus, don't be dramatic. We can work through this. I clipped Tank's leash to his collar and headed for the door. Marcus, I turned back. Avery stood in our kitchen, still perfect in her designer clothes and careful makeup, but something had cracked in her composure. Don't do anything stupid, she said. Like trusting my wife? I closed the door behind me and loaded Tank into the truck. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Avery watching from the kitchen window. She looked small and far away, like a stranger in a house I used to call home. Deshawn's apartment building was a converted warehouse in the arts district. Exposed brick walls and high ceilings, the kind of place young professionals were buying up and calling authentic. His unit was on the third floor, overlooking a coffee shop that made $15 sandwiches. I knocked 3 times. It was barely 8 in the morning. Marcus? Deshawn opened the door wearing basketball shorts and a frown. What the hell, man? You look like somebody died. Can I come in? Course. His apartment was typical Deshawn. Minimalist furniture, expensive electronics, and a kitchen so clean it looked like a magazine shoot. He poured me coffee without asking and sat across from me at his dining table. Talk. I told him everything. The phone call, the hotel, the incident report, Avery's lies and her comment about other circles. By the time I finished, Deshawn's jaw was tight and his hands were clenched into fists. That bitch, he said. Don't. Don't what? She cheated on you, Marcus, with some corporate pretty boy, and then she tried to make you look crazy. I know what she did. Then why aren't you angrier? I thought about it. Why wasn't I screaming or punching walls or planning dramatic confrontations? Why did I feel so calm? Because being angry won't fix it, I said. And I'm not going to prove her right about me. Deshawn stared at me for a long moment. What do you need? A place to stay for a while, and someone to keep me from doing something stupid. You got both. He showed me to his spare room. It was small but clean, with a twin bed and a dresser that looked like it came from a furniture store that sold everything for $99. Tank sniffed around the space, then settled on the rug by the window. Shower's through there, Deshawn said, pointing down the hallway. I got extra towels and whatever. You need clothes? I'll grab some from the house later. What about the garage? We open at 9, normal day. Normal day? He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Your wife just blew up your marriage and you want to work on cars? Yeah. Marcus, I need to work, D. I need to think with my hands for a while. He nodded slowly. Okay, but we're talking about this more later. I showered and changed into the spare work clothes I kept in my truck. By 8:35, we were driving to the garage in Deshawn's Mustang, Tank hanging his head out the back window like everything was normal. The morning air was crisp and clean, and the sun was coming up over the city skyline. Thursday morning in November. The world kept turning, even when your personal world fell apart. You know what pisses me off the most? Deshawn said as we turned onto MLK Boulevard. What? She made you think you were crazy before she even did anything wrong. That's some calculated shit right there. He was right. Avery hadn't just cheated, she'd prepared for it, planned for the possibility that she'd get caught and need to control the story. That hurt worse than the betrayal itself. It meant she'd been thinking about this for a long time, planning for it, maybe even looking forward to it. You know what I'm thinking? I said. What? I'm thinking she just showed me exactly who she really is, and I should probably thank her for the clarity. Deshawn glanced over at me. You sure you're okay? No, but I will be. We pulled into the garage parking lot just as Mrs. Patel was arriving for her appointment. Her vintage sedan needed final detailing after a complete restoration that had taken 2 months. She always paid in cash and always brought homemade cookies for the staff. Good morning, Marcus, she said, climbing carefully out of her daughter's minivan. Is my baby ready? Yes, ma'am. She's perfect. And for the next few hours, working on Mrs. Patel's car and helping her understand every detail of the restoration, I almost forgot about hotel rooms and 36 minutes and the sound of my wedding ring hitting the kitchen counter. Almost. Mrs. Patel walked around her restored sedan like she was greeting an old friend. The 1987 Honda Accord gleamed under the garage's fluorescent lights, every scratch buffed away, every piece of chrome polished to mirror brightness. Marcus, this is beautiful work, she said, running her fingers along the door panel. You made her young again. Yes, ma'am. New paint, rebuilt engine, fresh interior. She'll run another 100,000 miles easy. Mrs. Patel opened her oversized purse and pulled out a thick envelope. The final payment. Cash, as we discussed. I counted the bills carefully. $4,200. Combined with her previous payments, it was enough to keep the garage running smoothly for months, maybe enough to expand. You fix more than cars, you know, she said quietly. I looked up from the money. Ma'am? You fix hope. My husband bought this car in 1987, the year we moved to America. He drove it to his first job interview, to the hospital when our children were born, to their graduations. When he passed last year, I thought I'd lost all those memories. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. But now when I drive it, I remember the good times. Not the ending, the beginning. I folded the envelope and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I'm glad we could help. You have a gift, Marcus. Don't let anyone make you forget that. She drove away slowly, carefully, like she was carrying precious cargo. Which, I guess she was. Deshawn emerged from under the hood of a Chevy pickup. What was that about? Nothing. Just a satisfied customer. But it was more than that. Mrs. Patel had reminded me of something I'd been forgetting. I had value. I created things. I fixed what was broken and made it better than before. Avery had never understood that about my work. To her, the garage was something I did until I found a real career, something temporary and slightly embarrassing, like a phase she was waiting for me to outgrow. I walked to the office and pulled out a yellow legal pad. At the top of the page, I wrote, "No scenes, only consequences." It was something my grandfather used to say. He'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Grandpa Joe was a quiet man who believed in letting your actions speak, louder than your words. Boy, he'd told me once when I was angry about some injustice at school, any fool can make noise. Takes a man to make things happen. I folded the paper and tucked it into my wallet, right behind my driver's license. At 12:30, my phone rang, Avery's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then played back her message. Marcus, we need to talk. This is ridiculous. Call me back. I deleted the message and typed a text instead. Dinner tomorrow. Neutral place. She responded immediately. Where? I'll let you know. I wanted time to think about location. Somewhere public but quiet. Somewhere she couldn't control the narrative or make a scene. The afternoon passed quickly. Deshawn and I replaced brake pads on a city fleet vehicle, diagnosed a transmission problem on a delivery truck, and did oil changes for 3 walk-in customers. Normal work. The kind that kept your hands busy and your mind focused. At 6 o'clock, we locked up and drove back to Deshawn's place. I made dinner while he dealt with paperwork, scrambled eggs, toast, and bacon that was probably a day past its prime. Tank got the bacon scraps. You seem better, Deshawn said, watching me flip eggs. I feel clearer. About what? About what I need to do. Which is? I plated the food and sat across from him at the kitchen table. Meet with her one more time. Make sure I understand what she really wants from me, then make some decisions. What kind of decisions? Whether to try to fix this or walk away. Deshawn stabbed his eggs with more force than necessary. She cheated on you, Marcus, with some corporate asshole. What's to fix? Maybe nothing, but I need to hear her say it. Say what? The truth, what I really am to her. After dinner, I took Tank for a walk around Deshawn's neighborhood. The streets were busy with young professionals heading to trendy restaurants and craft cocktail bars. The kind of people who worked in glass office buildings and worried about stock options instead of brake repairs. I found myself thinking about Avery's comment. Other circles. Like my world was somehow smaller or less important than hers. Like fixing cars was beneath the level of complexity required to understand her choices. But I did understand. That was the problem. I understood that she'd chosen Tyler because he fit into her world in ways I never would. I understood that she'd prepared excuses and backup stories because she'd been planning this betrayal for weeks, maybe months. Most of all, I understood that she saw me as an accessory to her life rather than a partner in it. My phone buzzed with another text from Avery. Marcus, please don't shut me out. We can work through this. I love you. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, Riverside Diner, Friday, 7:30 p.m. Fine, she replied. I turned off my phone and finished the walk in peace. Tank trotted beside me, occasionally stopping to investigate. Interesting smells, completely content to be wherever I was. Dogs were good that way, loyal without conditions, present without expectations. Friday evening arrived gray and drizzly. I spent the day at the garage, working on routine maintenance jobs and trying not to think about the conversation ahead. Deshawn offered to come with me for moral support, but I declined. This was something I needed to handle alone. The Riverside Diner was a local institution. Family-owned, black and white checkered floors, red vinyl booths that had seen better days but were clean and comfortable. The kind of place where coffee cost $2 and refills were free. I arrived at 7:25 and chose a window booth toward the back. The dinner crowd was thinning out. A few elderly couples, some teenagers sharing French fries, a man in work clothes reading a newspaper while he ate pie. I ordered water and waited. Avery walked in at 7:35, scanning the room until she spotted me. She looked polished as always, navy blazer, expensive handbag, hair styled perfectly despite the weather. But there was something tight around her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. She slid into the booth across from me, setting her purse carefully on the seat. Hi, she said. Hi. The waitress came over with a coffee pot. Avery ordered herbal tea and a chicken salad. I asked for another water. You're not eating? Avery asked. Not hungry. We sat in silence while the waitress brought her tea. Avery added honey and stirred it slowly, buying time. Marcus, I know you're upset. What do you want from me, Avery? The directness of the question seemed to catch her off guard. What do you mean? Besides optics, besides the image of being married to a blue-collar guy who makes you look grounded and relatable, What do you actually want from me? She set down her spoon carefully. That's not fair, isn't it? I love you. Do you? Of course I do. Then explained Tyler Brandt. Her face went through several micro expressions before settling on what I recognized as her boardroom face: controlled, strategic. Tyler is. It's complicated. 36 minutes complicated? It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did happen. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Marcus, you have to understand the pressure I'm under. The merger, the board meetings, constantly proving myself in a male dominated industry. Sometimes I need connections, relationships that help me navigate these situations. Relationships, professional relationships that sometimes become personal. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Are you telling me you slept with Tyler for business reasons? I'm telling you that you don't understand how my world works. Your world, the corporate world, high stakes negotiations, people who control billions of dollars and make decisions that affect thousands of employees. She was talking to me like I was a child who needed simple explanations, and I don't fit into that world. You could, if you wanted to, I could help you transition into something more suitable. Suitable. Marcus, you're intelligent, you're hardworking. You could succeed in finance or consulting or project management, something that matches my professional level. I took a sip of water and considered her words. She wasn't offering to include me in her world as I was. She was offering to help me become someone else entirely. What if I like fixing cars? You could keep it as a hobby, or an investment. You could own multiple locations, hire managers, build a brand. Think bigger. I watched her face as she spoke. She was excited now, animated by the vision of transforming me into something more acceptable to her social circle. You could wear suits, she continued. We could entertain clients at the house. You'd fit in better at company events. With people like Tyler, her enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Tyler was a mistake. Was he? Yes. Will there be other mistakes? She was quiet for a long moment. I can't promise there won't be complications. My career requires certain sacrifices. From me, from both of us. I leaned back in the booth and looked at my wife. Really looked at her. The perfect makeup and expensive clothes and carefully styled hair. The wedding ring that cost more than most people made in a month. The confident posture of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. What happens if I say no? I asked. No to what? No to changing? No to becoming someone else? No to accepting complications? Her face hardened. Then you're choosing to limit both of us. Am I? Marcus, I'm offering you opportunities most people would kill for. Financial security, social status, connections that could open doors you didn't even know existed. And all I have to do is stop being myself. You'd be a better version of yourself. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a $10 bill. I left it on the table next to my water glass. Where are you going? I stood up and looked down at her. I don't accept apologies that cost nothing. What's that supposed to mean? It means saying sorry is easy when you don't have to change anything. When you still get to keep Tyler and your complications and your better version of me. Marcus, sit down, we're not finished. Yeah, we are. I walked out of the diner without looking back. Through the window, I could see Avery sitting alone in the booth, staring at the money I'd left behind. Back at Deshawn's apartment, I sat on his couch and tried to process what had just happened. Avery hadn't denied the affair. She justified it. More than that, she'd made it clear that cheating was just one of many complications I could expect if I stayed married to her. She'd also made it clear that she saw our marriage as a project, something to be optimized and improved until I fit properly into her life plan. My phone buzzed with a text. That was childish. We need to finish this conversation. I turned off the phone and pulled out the legal pad I'd started that morning. Under no scenes, only consequences, I wrote a new list. My rules: sleep 8 hours, eat regular meals, work scheduled blocks, no drama, after 9 p.m., exercise daily, keep promises to myself. Simple things. Basic self respect disguised as routine. Tank jumped onto the couch beside me and put his head on my leg. Outside, the city hummed with its usual Friday night energy. Cars passing, music from nearby bars, people living their lives without thinking about betrayal or compromise or whether love was supposed to cost your dignity. I scratched Tank behind the ears and made a decision. Tomorrow, I would start building something new. Not a better version of myself for Avery's approval, but a stronger version for my own peace of mind. My phone stayed off for the rest of the night. Saturday morning came bright and clear. I woke early, made coffee, and took Tank for a long walk around the neighborhood. The exercise felt good. The routine felt better. At 9:15, Deshaun burst into the apartment waving an official-looking letter. "We got it," he shouted. "The city contract." I read over his shoulder. The Department of Public Works had approved our bid to maintain their fleet of landscaping vehicles. 60 trucks, regular service intervals, guaranteed work for 18 months. "How did this happen?" I asked. "Mrs. Patel. Turns out her cousin runs fleet operations. She put in a word for us after seeing how we restored her car." I thought about Mrs. Patel's comment. "You fix more than cars." Maybe she was right. This is huge, Marcus. We're talking about steady income, expansion possibilities, maybe hiring another mechanic. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I was smiling. For the first time in days, I felt something besides anger and disappointment. I felt pride. We spent the morning planning, new equipment we'd need, tool upgrades that would make us more efficient, a paint booth rental that would let us handle bodywork in-house. "We should celebrate," Deshaun said. "Go out tonight, hit the clubs, find you someone who appreciates what you bring to the table." "I'm not ready for that." "When will you be?" "When I figure out who I am without her." Deshaun studied my face. "You know who you are, Marcus. You always have." She's the one who was confused. Maybe he was right. Maybe the problem wasn't that I didn't fit into Avery's world. Maybe the problem was thinking I needed to. That afternoon, I drove to a men's clothing store downtown. Not for suits or anything corporate, just clean, well-fitted casual clothes, jeans that actually fit, shirts that weren't stained with motor oil, a leather jacket that didn't have holes in the elbows. I wasn't trying to become someone else. I was trying to become the best version of who I already was. The salesman was a young black guy named Kenneth who understood what I was looking for without me having to explain it. "You want to look put together without looking like you're trying too hard," he said. "Exactly. I got you." An hour later, I walked out with 3 shopping bags and a new understanding of how clothes could make you feel. Not different, but more confident in your own skin. On the way back to Deshawn's, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Cole, this is Vivian Lang." Avery's mother. I pulled over to take the call. "Mrs. Lang. I was hoping we could chat. I'm outside your garage, actually." I checked the time. 4:30 p.m. "I'll be there in 10 minutes." Vivian Lang was everything I expected and worse. Pearl necklace, designer handbag, perfectly styled silver hair, and a smile that never reached her eyes. She stood beside a black Mercedes sedan, looking completely out of place in our industrial neighborhood. "Marcus, dear. So good to see you." She'd never called me dear in the 5 years I'd been married to her daughter. "Mrs. Lang, what can I do for you?" I was hoping we could have a frank conversation about this situation with Avery. "What situation?" Her smile tightened. Marcus, let's not play games. Avery told me about your misunderstanding at the hotel. Misunderstanding. Like infidelity was just a communication problem. She also told me you've been staying elsewhere. I think that's wise. Sometimes a little space helps put things in perspective. Is that right? Of course. Marriage requires adjustments, especially when two people come from such different backgrounds. I kept my expression neutral, but I could feel anger building in my chest like pressure in a boiler. Avery has always been generous in her affections, Vivian continued. She sees potential where others might not. That's how she ended up with you, after all. Meaning? Meaning she took a chance on someone outside her usual circle, someone who could provide balance to her public image. Each word was chosen carefully, delivered with the surgical precision of someone who'd spent decades perfecting the art of polite cruelty. But that generosity comes with expectations, she continued, loyalty, discretion, and understanding of one's place in the larger picture. And what's my place, Mrs. Lang? You're the devoted husband who supports Avery's career and doesn't ask complicated questions about the necessities of corporate advancement. I pulled out my phone and started the voice recorder app. Mrs. Lang, I want to make sure I understand you correctly. Are you suggesting that I should accept my wife's affair because it might help her professionally? Her composure flickered for just a moment. I'm suggesting that successful marriages require mature perspectives on complex situations. Complex situations like Tyler Brandt? Like the realities of power and influence in Avery's industry. I stopped recording and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Thank you for clarifying that, I said. I hope you'll consider what I've said, Marcus. Avery needs caliber in a partner, someone who understands that love sometimes requires flexibility. And if I don't feel flexible? Her mask slipped completely then. The polite smile disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Then, you should probably consider whether you're really the right fit for our family. She climbed into her Mercedes and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with the distinct impression that I'd just been threatened in the politest possible way. I looked at my reflection in the garage's front window. Clean clothes, clear eyes, steady hands. I looked like a man who belonged exactly where he was. Respect isn't alone, I said to my reflection. Then I went inside to plan what came next. Sunday morning, I woke up with a plan. Deshaun was still asleep when I took Tank for his walk. The neighborhood was quiet except for the occasional jogger and the distant sound of church bells from St. Matthew's down the street. Good people starting their day with purpose and hope. I'd been thinking about Vivian Lang's visit, her polite threats and careful words about knowing my place, the way she'd looked at me like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. She was right about one thing. I needed to understand my place, but not the place she had in mind. At 10:30, Deshaun and I drove across town to Prestige Motors. It was the kind of dealership that specialized in pre-owned luxury cars. Clean, professional, no pressure sales tactics. The type of place where they assumed you knew what you wanted and had the money to pay for it. You sure about this? Deshaun asked as we pulled into the lot. I'm sure about a lot of things now. The car I'd researched was a 2019 Lamborghini Huracan, Nero Noctis black with red interior, low mileage, clean maintenance records, and a price that was steep but fair for what it was. The salesman was a middle-aged white guy named Patterson who treated us with polite skepticism until I started asking technical questions about the car's engine and maintenance history. You know your way around exotic cars, he said, sounding surprised. I know my way around all cars. I spent an hour going over every detail: paint condition, tire wear, interior care, service records. This wasn't an impulse purchase. This was an investment in myself. The previous owner babied this thing, Patterson said. Garage kept, dealer serviced, never tracked. What's your best price? He quoted a number that was exactly what I'd expected based on my research. Fair, but not cheap. I'll take it. You want to discuss financing options? Cash. His eyebrows went up. Cash? Certified check. I'll need a day to arrange it with my bank. Between Mrs. Patel's payment, the city contract, and money I'd been saving for years, I could swing it. Barely, but I could swing it. Mr. Cole, Patterson said, his tone noticeably warmer now, I think we can work something out. By 1:30, I'd signed the paperwork and arranged to pick up the car Tuesday afternoon after final inspection and detailing. Why a Lambo? Deshaun asked as we drove back to his place. Because I can. That's it? Because I work hard, I save my money, and I deserve nice things too. And because Avery will see it. I thought about that. Maybe. But that's not why I'm buying it. Then why? Because I'm tired of apologizing for who I am. Monday at the garage was busy. The city fleet contract meant we needed to reorganize our schedule and order new equipment. I spent the morning on the phone with suppliers, negotiating prices for hydraulic lifts and diagnostic tools. At lunchtime, I drove to the bank to arrange the certified check for the Lambo. The loan officer was a young black woman named Keisha who reviewed my finances with professional thoroughness. Your credit score is excellent, she said, and you have substantial savings for someone in your income bracket. I don't spend much on foolishness. This car purchase is quite a departure from your usual spending patterns. Sometimes departures are necessary, she smiled. I understand. Congratulations on your purchase, Mr. Cole. Walking back to my truck with the certified check in my jacket pocket, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Pride. Not the borrowed pride of being married to someone successful, but genuine satisfaction in my own accomplishments. At 5:45, just as we were closing up the garage, Tyler Brandt showed up. He drove a silver Audi A4 and wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He parked right in front of the bay doors and walked in like he owned the place. Marcus Cole? He said, extending a manicured hand. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, but didn't shake his. Tyler. I was hoping we could chat. Deshaun emerged from under the hood of a Chevy and sized Tyler up with one look. We're closed. This won't take long, Tyler said, still focused on me. Avery overreacted to a harmless situation. You seem like a reasonable guy. I'm sure we can work this out. Work what out? This misunderstanding. Avery told me you're upset about the conference, but honestly, you're lucky to have a wife with such professional drive. Lucky. Like Avery's betrayal was some kind of favor. She's building something important, Tyler continued. The merger alone will create thousands of jobs. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions. Difficult decisions. Exactly. You strike me as someone who understands sacrifice. Deshaun took a step closer. You need to leave. Tyler held up his hands in mock surrender. I'm just trying to help everyone see the bigger picture here. And what's the bigger picture? I asked. That Avery needs a partner who supports her ambitions, someone who doesn't create drama over corporate necessities. Corporate necessities. Look, Marcus, can I call you Marcus? Avery described you as a good guy who maybe doesn't understand how high-stakes business works. She called you her... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Her PR accessory, someone who keeps her grounded and relatable. The words hit like a physical blow. PR accessory, not husband, not partner, a prop for Avery's public image. Tyler must have seen something in my face because he quickly added, but that's valuable. Do you know how hard it is to maintain authentic connections in our world? I looked at this man, younger than me, softer than me, wearing a suit that cost more than some people's cars, and felt perfectly calm. Tyler, I said quietly. Yeah? Get out of my garage. Marcus, I think you're misunderstanding. Deshaun. My cousin stepped forward. Tyler glanced between us and apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. Think about what I said, he called over his shoulder as he headed for his Audi. Avery's offering you a good life. Don't throw it away over wounded pride. After he left, Deshaun and I stood in the quiet garage for a long moment. PR accessory, Deshaun said finally. Yeah, that's some cold shit right there. I pulled out my phone and sent Avery a text. We're done discussing feelings. Meet me Wednesday noon, Rivers End Grand Lobby. Bring honesty. She replied immediately. Marcus, what did Tyler tell you? I didn't respond. Tuesday evening, I picked up the Lamborghini. Patterson had been true to his word. The car was flawless, every surface polished, every detail perfect. It sat low and aggressive in the dealership's lot like a predator waiting to hunt. She's all yours, Patterson said, handing me the keys. I signed the final paperwork, transferred the certified check, and slipped behind the wheel. The interior was exactly what I'd expected. Hand-stitched leather, carbon fiber accents, everything designed for performance and comfort. The engine started with a growl that felt like controlled thunder. I drove carefully through downtown traffic, getting used to the car's responses and the way other drivers reacted to it. Some stared, some took pictures at red lights. A few teenagers at a bus stop pointed and grinned. Instead of going straight back to Deshawn's, I took a detour through my old neighborhood, past the house I'd renovated for Avery, past the coffee shop where we used to have Sunday breakfast, past the park where we'd walked tank on lazy Saturday mornings. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The landscaping I'd installed was overgrown, and one of the shutters hung crooked. Nothing dramatic, just the small signs of a place that wasn't being cared for properly. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, engine running. Through the front window, I could see lights in the kitchen. Avery was home. Part of me wanted to knock on the door, to show her the car and prove that I was more than she thought I was, to see the surprise in her eyes when she realized I could afford nice things too. But that would have been about her reaction, not my satisfaction. I backed out of the driveway and drove to Deshawn's apartment complex. The Lambo looked strange in the modest parking lot, but it belonged to me. I'd earned it through years of careful work and smart choices. Damn, Deshawn said when he saw it. That's a serious machine. Wanna go for a ride? Hell yes. We drove through the city with the windows down and the radio off, listening to the engine's symphony. Deshawn whooped when I accelerated onto the highway, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Really laughed. You know what this is? Deshawn said as we cruised back toward his neighborhood. What? This is you remembering who you are. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd spent so long trying to fit into Avery's world that I'd forgotten I had value in my own. Back at the apartment, I parked the Lambo carefully and covered it with a car cover I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Taking care of things was important, respecting what you'd worked for. Inside, I updated my rules list. 6. Exercise daily. 7. Keep promises to myself. 8. Remember what I've earned. Tank curled up at my feet while I planned what I would say to Avery tomorrow. Not angry words or dramatic accusations, just honest conversation about what we both really wanted from this marriage, if anything. Wednesday morning, I took extra care getting ready. I wore one of the new shirts I'd bought, dark jeans without stains, and the leather jacket that made me feel confident without trying too hard. Deshawn offered to drive me to the hotel, but I took the Lambo. Not to show off, but because it was mine and I wanted to drive it. The Riversend Grand looked the same as it had the night everything changed. Same marble lobby, same crystal chandeliers, same quiet wealth on display. but I felt different walking through it now. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a chair in the lobby where I could see the elevators. At exactly noon, Avery stepped out of the elevator wearing a navy business dress and the expression she used in difficult board meetings. She saw me immediately and walked over with measured steps. "Hello, Marcus." "Avery?" She sat in the chair across from me, crossing her legs and setting her purse precisely on her lap. "You look different," she said. "Do I?" "New clothes, new confidence. Tyler said you bought a car." "Tyler said a lot of things. He told me about his visit to your garage. He was trying to help." "Was he?" "Marcus, I know you're angry, but I'm not angry." That stopped her. She'd been preparing for anger, accusations, emotional outbursts. She hadn't prepared for calm. "You're not?" "No, I'm clear." I pulled out my phone and called Nadia Brooks. She answered on the second ring. "Ms. Brooks, this is Marcus Cole. Would you be able to meet with my wife and me for a few minutes? We're in your lobby." "Of course, Mr. Cole. I'll be right down." I hung up and looked at Avery. "We're going to hear the incident report together. All of it." "Marcus, this is unnecessary." "Is it?" Nadia appeared a few minutes later, professional as always in her navy blazer and calm demeanor. "Mrs. Cole," she said to Avery. "Mr. Cole, would you prefer to speak in a conference room?" "Yes," I said. We followed her to a small meeting room off the lobby. Nadia closed the door and opened the same leather portfolio she'd shown me that first night. "Mrs. Cole, your husband has requested that you hear the incident summary from last Wednesday evening. Are you comfortable with that?" Avery glanced at me, then nodded stiffly. Nadia read through the report with the same professional tone she'd used with me. Times, names, room numbers, the denied request from Tyler to access security footage. When she finished, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. "Thank you," I said to Nadia. "I appreciate your professionalism." "Of course. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No, ma'am, we're good." After Nadia left, Avery and I sat across from each other at the small conference table. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. I'd been carrying it since the night I took it off. I placed it on the table between us. "Tyler called me your PR accessory," I said quietly. Avery's face went pale. "Marcus, he said you described me as someone who keeps you grounded and relatable, someone who doesn't understand your world but makes you look authentic. That's not... Is it true?" She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "It's more complicated than that." "Is it true?" "Marcus, you have to understand the pressures I'm under. The board, the investors, the media scrutiny. Sometimes I have to frame things in ways that... Is it true?" She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her eyes, the last pretense falling away. "Yes," she whispered. I nodded and stood up. "Where are you going?" "Home." "Marcus, please. We can work through this. I know I've made mistakes, but I won't carry what you did." "What does that mean?" I looked down at her sitting at the table, my wedding ring glinting between us like a small, abandoned promise. "It means I'm done being your accessory." I walked out of the conference room, through the marble lobby, and into the parking lot where my Lamborghini waited in the afternoon sun. The engine roared to life, and I drove away from the Riversend Grand for what I knew would be the last time. Behind me, Avery sat alone in a conference room with a wedding ring on a table and the truth finally spoken out loud. Back at the garage, I found Deshaun installing a new diagnostic computer we'd ordered with money from the city contract. "How'd it go?" he asked, without looking up from his work. "It went." She admit to everything? She admitted to enough. I changed into work clothes and spent the afternoon detailing the Lambo myself. washing, waxing, checking fluid levels, treating the leather, taking care of what was mine. At 6:40, I drove to the Riverside Park where Avery and I used to walk on weekends. I parked overlooking the water and rolled down the windows. For one full minute, I didn't think about her at all. I thought about the city contract and the new equipment we were buying, about Mrs. Patel and her restored Honda, about Tank sleeping peacefully at Deshawn's apartment, about the sound of a well-tuned engine and the satisfaction of fixing what was broken. For one minute, I was just a man sitting by the river in a car he'd earned through honest work, watching the sun set over water that had been flowing long before my problems began and would keep flowing long after they were resolved. It felt like freedom. Thursday morning brought the first attempt at damage control. I was at the garage early, reviewing maintenance schedules for the city fleet vehicles, when my phone chimed with an email from Avery. The subject line read, Joint Statement, Marcus and Avery Cole. I opened it reluctantly. Dear friends and family, Marcus and I are taking some time apart to work through recent stress-related challenges in our marriage. We remain committed to each other and to resolving our differences through professional counseling and honest communication. We ask for privacy during this difficult time and appreciate your understanding as we navigate this process together. With love and gratitude, Marcus and Avery. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed a reply. No statement, no optics. A second email arrived an hour later with a proposed schedule for couples therapy sessions and a list of mutual goals that included things like rebuilding trust and improving communication patterns. I deleted it without responding. Instead, I sent a different kind of message. I'll collect personal items Saturday at 10 a.m. Please arrange for the house manager to be present. Her reply was immediate. Marcus, this doesn't have to be permanent. We can fix this. I turned off email notifications and went back to work. Deshawn found me at lunch, sitting in the office with a sandwich and a legal pad covered in notes. What you working on? Planning. For what? The rest of my life. I showed him the list I'd been making. Next 30 days, finish city fleet setup, find permanent housing, establish new routines, complete divorce paperwork research. Next 60 days, expand garage services, paint booth installation, hire part-time mechanic, personal financial planning. Next 90 days, evaluate business growth options, consider real estate investment, plan vacation, first in 3 years. Deshawn read through it twice. This is some organized shit right here. Grandpa Joe used to say that failing to plan is planning to fail. You really think it's over with Avery? I thought about her sitting in that conference room, finally admitting that I was just an accessory to her real life, about Tyler's visit and his casual mention of corporate necessities, about Vivian Lang and her polite threats about knowing my place. Yeah, I said, it's over. How do you feel about that? Relieved. And I was. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe fully, like I could be myself without apologizing for it or trying to change it to fit someone else's expectations. That evening, I drove the Lambo through the city with no destination in mind, just driving for the pleasure of it, enjoying the way the car responded to every input and the way the engine sang at highway speeds. I passed the hotel where everything started. The doorman nodded as I went by, a small acknowledgement that felt like respect rather than tolerance. I passed Avery's office building, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky like a monument to ambition. The parking garage was mostly empty, but I could see a few lights still burning on the executive floors. People working late, chasing deals and mergers and the kind of success that required sacrificing everything else. I drove on. At a red light, I pulled up next to a beaten-up pickup truck with Rodriguez Construction painted on the side. The driver was a Latino man about my age, work clothes, calloused hands on the steering wheel. He glanced over at the Lambo, then at me, and grinned. He gave me a thumbs up. I grinned back and returned the gesture. The light turned green, and we went our separate ways. Two working men who understood the value of honest labor and the satisfaction of earning something beautiful. I drove home to Deshawn's apartment, feeling like I'd remembered something important about who I was and who I wanted to be. Not Avery's grounded, relatable accessory, just Marcus Cole, mechanic, business owner, man who took care of his responsibilities and his dog and his cousin and his customers, man who deserved respect and wouldn't settle for less. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Saturday morning came gray and drizzling. I woke at 7:30, took Tank for a long walk, and spent an hour detailing the Lambo even though it didn't need it. The routine of caring for something beautiful helped calm my nerves for what was coming. At 9:58, I pulled into the circular driveway of the house I'd once called home. The mansion sat on 2 acres of manicured lawn in Brookhaven, all stone and glass and expensive landscaping. I'd always felt like a visitor here, even after 5 years of marriage. Now, I felt like exactly what I was, someone collecting his belongings. The house manager, Mrs. Chen, opened the front door before I could knock. She was a kind woman in her 60s who'd worked for Avery's family for years. "Mr. Cole," she said with genuine warmth. "Good morning." "Morning, Mrs. Chen. I appreciate you arranging this. Of course, Ms. Avery is upstairs. She asked me to supervise the collection." I could hear the discomfort in her voice. Mrs. Chen had always treated me with respect, and this situation clearly made her uncomfortable. "That's fine. I just need my personal items." Avery appeared at the top of the curved staircase as I stepped into the foyer. She wore jeans and a sweater, casual clothes that made her look younger and more vulnerable than her usual business attire. "Marcus," she said quietly. "Avery." She descended the stairs slowly like she was buying time to think of the right words. "I had hoped we could talk before you." "Before I what?" "Before you make this permanent." I looked around the foyer with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. Everything perfect and expensive and cold. "It's already permanent." "It doesn't have to be." I walked past her toward the guest bedroom I'd been using for the past year. Avery had suggested the arrangement after I started snoring, or so she said. Looking back, I realized it was probably around the time she started whatever was happening with Tyler. My belongings were pathetically few. Some clothes, a few books, my father's watch, the toolbox I kept for home repairs. Everything that really mattered to me had never been in this house anyway. I packed methodically, ignoring the gifts Avery had bought me over the years. The expensive watch that wasn't my style, the silk ties I'd never worn, the artwork she'd chosen for our bedroom. None of it had ever felt like mine. "You're really not taking anything I gave you?" Avery asked from the doorway. "No. Not even the tools? I bought you that whole DeWalt set for Christmas. You can keep them." "Marcus, those cost—" "I know what they cost. I also know why you bought them." She was quiet for a moment. "Why did I buy them?" "Same reason you married me. To prove to yourself that you cared about regular people." That hit home. I could see it in her face. I finished packing and carried my single duffel bag to the bedroom door. Avery stepped aside to let me pass, but barely. "This is really it?" she asked. "Yeah. 5 years of marriage, and you're walking away with one bag?" I thought about that. I'm walking away with my self-respect. That's worth more than anything else in this house. We walked downstairs in silence. Mrs. Chen was waiting by the front door with a manila envelope. "Your mail, Mr. Cole, and this came for you yesterday." The envelope contained forwarded mail from the garage and a letter from my insurance company about updating my policy. Normal life, continuing despite everything falling apart. At the door, I turned back to Avery one more time. "I hope you become kinder," I said. The words seemed to hit her like a physical blow. Her composure cracked, and for a moment she looked lost. "You'll never be anyone without me," she whispered. I studied her face, the desperation, the cruelty, the fear all mixed together. This was who she really was when her masks fell away. "We'll see," I said. I walked out into the gray morning, loaded my bag into the Lambo, and drove away without looking back. Saturday afternoon, I was changing the oil on a customer's Toyota when Deshaun burst into the garage waving his phone. "You need to see this," he said. "What now?" "Vivian Lang just tried to call our landlord about the lease terms." I set down my wrench. "What?" "Mrs. Patel's cousin owns the building next door. He called to give us a heads up. Apparently, Vivian was asking questions about our rental agreement, trying to find leverage to pressure us." My stomach tightened. I should have expected this. Vivian Lang didn't make idle threats. "What did he tell her?" Deshaun grinned. "That's the beautiful part. We don't rent, Marcus. We own." "What?" He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of an official document. "Remember when we got that loan 5 years ago to expand the shop? Mrs. Patel's family helped us structure it through their community investment group. We've been buying this building the whole time through a small co-op, made the final payment last month." I stared at the deed. Cole and Cole Automotive, LLC, was listed as one of the primary owners, along with the Patel Family Trust. "Vivian can't touch us," Deshaun continued. "We own our building, our equipment, and our business. That rich bitch has exactly zero leverage." I felt something relax in my chest that I didn't even realize had been tense. Financial security, independence, the freedom to succeed or fail on my own terms. "Does Vivian know?" "Oh, she knows now." Mrs. Patel's cousin was very polite when he explained the situation to her. Said she left the conversation quite quickly. I looked around the garage, our garage, the lifts we'd bought ourselves, the tools we'd chosen carefully, the business we'd built from nothing through honest work and good relationships. "We're really free," I said. "Free as birds, cousin." That evening, I texted Mrs. Patel. "Thank you for everything. You gave me more than money. You gave me independence." She replied an hour later. "You earned it, Beta. Now go live your life with joy." Monday morning, I met Nadia Brooks at a quiet cafe near the hotel. She'd agreed to have coffee when I called to thank her for her professionalism throughout everything. "I wanted you to know that your actions probably saved my marriage from dragging on for years," I told her over our coffee cups. "I just followed protocol, Mr. Cole." "You did more than that. You treated me with respect when other people were trying to make me feel crazy." She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "In my line of work, I see a lot of situations where people try to control narratives instead of facing truth. You handled a difficult situation with remarkable dignity." "Did I?" Most men would have made a scene, demanded to see footage, confronted the other party publicly. You stayed calm and let the facts speak for themselves. My grandfather taught me that any fool can make noise. Takes a man to make things happen. Smart grandfather. "Yes, ma'am." We talked for another 20 minutes about boundaries, respect, and how staying calm in crisis often led to better outcomes than emotional reactions. It wasn't romantic. Nadia was professional to the core, and I was still processing the end of my marriage. But it was good to talk with someone who understood the value of doing the right thing, even when it was difficult. "Thank you for calling me instead of her that night," I said as we prepared to leave. "I'm glad I could help," she said. "Take care of yourself, Marcus." I drove to work feeling grateful for people like Nadia Brooks, professionals who did their jobs with integrity and treated everyone with basic human respect. Tuesday brought news that made me smile. I was installing a new timing belt on Mrs. Johnson's Honda when Deshaun took a call from his friend Reggie, who worked in corporate security downtown. "Tyler Brandt is on sabbatical," Deshaun announced after hanging up. "Indefinitely." What happened? Word is, he tried to pull strings to suppress some kind of security footage, made some threats, called in favors, generally acted like an entitled asshole. Corporate didn't appreciate the attention he was drawing to whatever he'd been up to. I felt a moment of satisfaction, but it passed quickly. Tyler's downfall wasn't my victory. My victory was building something better for myself. Good for him, I said, and meant it. Maybe he'll learn something. You're not even a little bit glad? I'm glad he can't hurt anyone else the way he helped hurt me, but his problems are his problems now. That afternoon, I drove the Lambo past the Riversend Grand. The same doorman was working the entrance, and he nodded when he saw me, a small gesture of recognition and respect. I nodded back and drove on. Thursday evening, as I was closing up the garage, I heard a car pull into the lot. Through the office window, I saw Avery's white BMW. I took a deep breath and walked outside to meet her. She was standing beside her car, looking uncertain in a way I'd never seen before. Her usually perfect hair was slightly mussed and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked younger and more vulnerable than she had in years. "Hi," she said. "Hi. I saw your car, the Lamborghini. It's impressive. Thank you. I didn't know you could afford something like that. There's a lot you didn't know about me." She looked around the garage lot, taking in the new equipment visible through the open bay doors, the professional signage, the clean and organized workspace. "Business looks good." "It is good. I heard about the city contract." "That's wonderful, Marcus. You should be proud." "I am." We stood in awkward silence for a moment. I waited for her to say why she'd come. "I've been thinking about what you said, about becoming kinder." "Okay. I don't think I know how." The admission seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised me. "I think maybe I've been competitive and ambitious for so long that I forgot how to be human, how to care about people instead of what they could do for me." I studied her face. She seemed genuinely remorseful, but I'd learned not to trust my ability to read Avery's motivations. "What do you want, Avery?" "A second chance." "To do what?" "To be married to you. For real this time. As equals." I thought about that. About the house I could never afford. About Tyler and the hotel room and 36 minutes. About being called a PR accessory. About Vivian Lang and her threats about knowing my place. "I can't do that," I said. "Why not?" "Because I don't trust you. And because I don't want to." That seemed to hit her harder than anything else I'd said. "You don't want to trust me?" "I don't want to be married to you, Avery. Not the way we were and not any other way. But we could be different. You could be different. I'm going to be exactly who I am." She was crying now quietly, like she was trying to hide it. "What if I prove I've changed? Then you'll be a better person for someone else." I walked to the Lambo and unlocked the passenger door. "Come on, I'll drive you home." "Marcus, it's late. You're upset. Let me drive you." She got in the car without arguing. We drove through the city in silence while she cried softly in the passenger seat. I kept tissues in the glove compartment, a habit from the days when Tank would drool all over the truck's interior. When we reached her street, I pulled into the driveway and walked her to the front door. "I really did love you," she said as I unlocked the door for her. "I know you did, in your way. Will you ever forgive me?" I thought about forgiveness, about what it meant and what it cost. "I already have," I said, "but forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. Sometimes it just means letting go." She touched my face gently, like she was memorizing it. "I hope you find someone who deserves you. I hope you find someone who makes you want to be your best self." I waited until she was safely inside, then drove back to Deshawn's apartment. Tank was waiting for me, tail wagging, completely happy to see me regardless of where I'd been or what I'd been doing. Dogs were good that way. Friday morning, I woke up with a sense of completion, like a job finished well or an engine running smooth after a difficult repair. I updated my rules list one final time. 9. Memory without bitterness. 10. Grace without doormat. 11. Standards without compromise. That afternoon, I drove to a small house for sale in Grant Park. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, hardwood floors, and a detached garage big enough for 2 cars. The price was reasonable, and the neighborhood was solid. Working families, retirees, young professionals just starting out. The realtor was a cheerful woman named Sandra, who showed me through every room with professional enthusiasm. The previous owner maintained it well, she said. New roof, updated electrical, original hardwood floors refinished last year. I stood in the living room, looking out the front window at a tree-lined street where kids rode bicycles and neighbors talked over fence lines. I'll take it, I said. Don't you want to see other properties? Compare options? No, this is home. 2 hours later, I'd signed a purchase agreement and arranged financing. By Christmas, I'd be living in my own house again. A place that was mine because I'd earned it, not because I'd married into it. That evening, I drove to the garage and spent an hour planning the expansion we'd start next month. A paint booth that would let us handle bodywork, space for 2 more mechanics, maybe a small customer lounge with coffee and magazines, growth built on solid foundations, success earned through honest work and good relationships. As I locked up and headed home, I noticed a familiar black Mercedes parked across the street. Vivian Lang sat behind the wheel, watching me with the expression of someone who'd just realized she had no power here. I nodded politely as I got into the Lambo. She drove away without acknowledging me. 3 months later, spring was beginning to show itself in Atlanta. The dogwood trees were budding, and Mrs. Patel had brought the first batch of homemade cookies of the season. I was living in the Grant Park house with Tank, who'd claimed the back porch as his kingdom and spent most mornings watching squirrels with the focused attention of a general planning military campaigns. The garage was thriving. We'd hired 2 part-time mechanics and installed the paint booth. The city contract had led to 3 more fleet maintenance deals, and word of mouth was bringing in steady individual customers. I'd taken my first vacation in years, a week in the mountains with Tank, hiking trails, and sleeping in a cabin without cell phone service. It was the most peaceful 7 days I could remember. On Friday morning, I was test driving a customer's restored Mustang when I spotted a familiar white BMW at a red light. Avery was in the driver's seat, talking on her phone, looking perfectly put together as always. She glanced over and saw me in the Mustang. Our eyes met for just a moment before the light changed. I drove on. Later that day, as I was leaving the garage, I saw her again. She was parked across the street in her BMW, engine running, just sitting there. I got into the Lambo and started the engine. The rumble echoed off the buildings as I pulled out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see her following at a distance. This happened 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Avery appearing at random moments, outside the grocery store, at the gas station, driving past the garage. Never approaching, never trying to talk, just there. It didn't worry me. It didn't anger me. It just was. Some mornings, she still saw my Lamborghini at traffic lights or parked outside the coffee shop where I bought lunch. I was living my life, going about my business, building something good and solid and mine. The difference was, I wasn't waiting for her anymore. Wasn't thinking about her or planning around her or trying to prove anything to her. I was just Marcus Cole, driving to work in a car I'd earned, running a business I'd built, coming home to a house I owned, and a dog who loved me without conditions. Some mornings, she saw me. Some mornings, she didn't. Either way, I turned the corner and was gone, moving forward into whatever came next. 6 months later, Tank and I were at the park on a Sunday morning when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Tyler. I wanted to apologize for my behavior and thank you for handling everything with class. I'm in therapy now and working on being a better person. Hope you're well. I read the message twice, then deleted it. Some apologies were meant to heal the person giving them, not the person receiving them. Tyler could work on becoming better. That was between him and his conscience. I threw a tennis ball for Tank and watched him sprint after it with pure joy. The sun was warm on my face, and I had nowhere else to be. My phone buzzed again. Mrs. Chen, Avery's house manager. Mr. Cole, I hope this isn't inappropriate. Ms. Avery has sold the house and moved to New York for a new position. She asked me to tell you that she hopes you're happy. I wanted to add that working with you was always a pleasure. You're a good man. I smiled and typed back, "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. That means a lot. Take care of yourself." Tank brought back the tennis ball, dropped it at my feet, and looked at me expectantly, ready for the next throw, the next chase, the next moment of simple happiness. I threw the ball again and watched him run. Behind us, the city hummed with its usual weekend energy. People living their lives, making their choices, building their futures one decision at a time. Somewhere in New York, Avery was starting over. Somewhere in Atlanta, Tyler was in therapy. Somewhere in this same city, Vivian Lang was probably plotting her next move against someone else. But here, in this moment, there was just sunlight and grass and a happy dog and the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd chosen dignity over drama, self respect over revenge, and building over burning. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything.